You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
Purina believes no one should have to make the impossible choice between their own safety and their pets. But nearly half of domestic abuse survivors delay leaving because they can't bring their pets with them. Through the Purple Leash Project, Purina is helping create more pet-friendly domestic violence shelters so survivors and their pets can escape and heal together. Visit Purina.com/purple to learn more.
The family that vacations together stays together. At least, that was the plan. Except now, the Dastardly desk clerk is saying he can't confirm your connecting rooms.
Wait, what?
That's right, ma'am. You have rooms 201 and 709.
No, we cannot be 5 floors away from our kids.
The doors have double locks. They'll be fine.
When you want connecting rooms confirmed before you arrive, it matters where you stay.
Welcome to Hilton. I see your connecting rooms are already confirmed.
Hilton, for this day.
These kind of business-minded Republicans are pretty good at selling things. And most of the arguments wasn't about justice or truth or some concept like democracy generally. It was about what this system, which would come to be called the Cincinnati method, can do for you. Your ballot will keep working for you. Things like that were said. If I say the words ranked choice voting to you, probably the first thing you'll think of is this is a progressive or liberal or at least more left side of the politics equation solution. And more than a few of you might think, yeah, that's designed to help those type of people win elections. I mean, didn't Trump just say to stay away from ranked choice voting, and didn't the Heritage Foundation attack it as anti-democracy? Well, if we look at the history of it, like so many things, it's different. It actually gets its American start in the 1920s, and by a group of Republicans. See, boss George B. Cox, since the 1880s, when he starts as a clerk and a member of the Young Blaine Club, develops a rigid control over the political machine in Cincinnati, Ohio. And if anyone wants a job there, they have to go to the Gibson House Hotel and talk to James B. Cox. And there, maybe with a glass of whiskey, you're going to find out whether or not you got your job, one of the 2,000 jobs that Cox's political machine controlled. Or if you wanted a contract with the city, same thing. You want to work on the streetcars at that time, or later, the development of an underground subway that never got built. You're going to go see Cox. And, of course, what's going to come in return is the usual machine stuff. Absolute loyalty. Vote-getting power. It's not enough just to vote your vote for the Cox machine. You're going to have to corral others if you want a job with the city. There's a cartoon that will show up in one of the anti-Cox newspapers that will show a young teacher, woman, that's sort of afraid and approaching this giant man, political boss, with a cigar in his mouth. And he's saying, "Oh, you want a job as a teacher? How many votes can you bring in?" And probably, for many jobs with the city, it's going to involve kicking some money up. If you don't get the chance to talk to George Cox, then he's a busy guy. You're going to talk to his assistant, Rudd Hinnicke. Hinnicke has an interesting story on his own. He's not just some boring lieutenant to Cox. He gets involved in the political machine from a strange place, and that's the theater. It really seems to be his true interest. He likes performances. And maybe it's not that strange, because his theater, the Standard Theater in Cincinnati, which used to be the Vine Street Opera House, runs vaudeville shows, low end, we might say, entertainment for the working class, even burlesque shows. And it's good to have protection from the city and its inspectors. He needs to know when raids are coming for immoral practices, and spoiler alert, raids are not going to come on Hineke's theater. He's very successful. And for a cheap price, working men in Cincinnati come and see his shows. They have a smoke, they have a drink, and he'll introduce them to machine-picked candidates in the audience and throw a few flyers out. But the thing is, and this is going to be a key part of the story, Hineke's not just some political lieutenant without any skills. He's actually into this show business stuff. He's pretty good at managing a vaudeville troupe, as it turns out. And he starts a few operations where he's not just operating a theater, he's lending out his troupe of performers that he knows are really good, that can perform those little comedies, musical farce, and they create a big network. He's making a decent amount of cash from this, and that's able to help him get in with the political machine. He's got contacts, revenue streams. Guess what? There is a connection between these kind of theater performances and the city government. Moreover, the patronage structure of entertainment puts you in a nice mental place for a political machine. Performers, ushers, stagehands, these are all little jobs, and they depend on steady bookings, and Hineke could reward loyalty with jobs on the circuit, or punish dissent by cutting people off, same as he would with the political machine. Local officials are controlling those licenses and fire safety permits, which meant that running a theater also meant having leverage over City Hall and vice versa. A burlesque operator who backs the wrong faction could find his establishment suddenly lacking the proper fire permits. But wait, I've got just as many people as Hineke's theater does. Nope. So he's a shoo-in when George B. Cox dies in 1916, and he takes over the political machine. What else can we say about this political machine in Cincinnati? It has long roots. So Cox starts in the 1880s, really benefiting from that Blaine movement. And Blaine is a popular political figure in Ohio. He's going to be always running against those New York stalwarts. But there's this kind of local backwater, this city, that even prominent Republicans are starting to notice is kind of an eyesore. Because every time one of these political machine candidates run, the only issue they seem to talk about is how loyal they are to the machine. And while we're used to hearing about political machines being democratic, right? That seems to be the association that we're used to. There are a number of cities. I point your attention to Boardwalk Empire, that show that was on HBO in the past, and they figure in Nucky Johnson, who's controlling Atlantic City. So you're all Republican. So there's a couple cities like this, so it doesn't really matter what party you are, one machine or the other. And because Cincinnati happens to be Republican, this machine is. People are noticing it. For instance, in the Taft family, there is a split where Charles Taft, who, these are the sons of the president, William Howard Taft, is against the machine and sides up with candidates who are against Hineke's machine and Cox's machine. And Bob Taft, who will later become a senator from the state, is a machine man, and he rations it out this way. Well, I don't really like Hineke, but I support the Republican Party, and they are the Republican Party in the city of Cincinnati. And a lot of people are making this equation. In fact, we have a statement from President Harding at a certain point who says, look, I don't like that city is kind of gang-controlled. But what's the solution? Are we going to say we have to elect the other party, the Democrats, in order to flush out the Republicans? And it's been pretty rare, but Cincinnati had done that in the past. There was a brief time where there was a Democratic mayor, but generally Democrats in Cincinnati at this time are also rants. They don't have any money. They don't have any support. They're not getting anywhere. So setting that party scene, you're seeing that this is all Republicans in Cincinnati, but there are some cracks and people are a little bit embarrassed and looking for something else. Hinneke is different from your average political boss. He's actually good at running an entertainment business, and his traveling actors company starts local, maybe just around Cincinnati and then the Midwest, and then it starts growing from Boston to Chicago. And his company, which will become the Columbia Amusement Company or the Columbia Burlesque Company, depending on what audience he's talking to, is based out of New York, has huge contacts in Broadway, and it's actually very well run, and it's quite a cash generator for Hinneke. He's known. He's a known name on Broadway. And he starts, he gets a hotel room in a Midtown hotel, and he starts spending some time there and then going back to Cincinnati to sign off on various judgeships and other political offices, and then coming back to New York to run his business. It starts not too long after Cox's death in 1960. Newspapers are saying he's the absentee boss. Where is he? Now, the interesting thing about that absentee boss is that both Cox and Hinneke long ago are in the newspaper saying they retired from politics. I'm not in politics anymore. So it sort of fits anyway. But behind the scenes, they're controlling everything, even though they have no official political office. There are progressive-minded people who are thinking about change. All these bad city contracts, all this waste, all this payroll, intimidating people to get public jobs. Now, if you're saying, this sounds familiar, you may have listened a few years ago to my cast about the Cincinnati subway system, that subway system that's dug in the ground in Cincinnati but doesn't exist. There's no trains, but the holes are there, the tunnels are there, and some of the tracks are there. And we told this story about the patronage system that occurred at the turn of the century in Cincinnati. And we got into it because one of the big objects of waste that reformers had targeted was that subway system. They're working on the subway. They're digging holes in the ground. Does the city really need it? And it does give you both sides. Look, this is my history. You can beat up your politics. I'm not just going to tell a tale of good versus evil here. You know, that political machines are always bad. Because some progressive business reformers, one of the things that we're going to find in the future, I talked about in that subway cast, you know, they want to make everything highways, make everything automobiles. And many people, even today, comment that we don't have enough mass transit. And I talked about that a lot in that episode about the subway. Won't get into it so much here. There is another side to some of these political machines. They're making a decision to build the subway to make it easier for working men to travel from one place to another, to expand opportunities for them. But you can also make the case that they weren't moving very fast on the subway project. And was it ever really going to get built? It was a big boondoggle, a big payday for the political machine when that subway bond passes. And this is just one of many areas. Many areas. Again, we talked about 2,000 jobs where the boss is controlling. So the Republican city Democrats are like the Greens or the taxpayer party in the U.S. when you look at the Cincinnati equation. They can only win if the other people split. President Taft makes a comment about, you know, that he doesn't think it's a very good thing that Cincinnati is Republican controlled. The Taft family has a very odd, sometimes hot, sometimes cold relationship with this machine, probably best expressed by what we talked about earlier with Bob Taft, like, hey, they're the Republicans. I should not grieve if Hinneke would be overturned in Hamilton County, Harding says. 1921. So the reformer Republicans, they decide, okay, we got the signal. we need to reject Hinneke, but we still have to be national Republicans. They call their club the Cincinnati Club. They are known as Charterites because what they want to do to break the boss's control, he can win regular elections. We need to have a special election. We have to change the city charter. Hinneke has the town fixed. And they've got a great argument. This guy isn't even here. Where is he? At least, like Boss Tweed was sitting in his chair in New York. This guy's not even in Cincinnati, and he's running the town. So the Charterites want to do more than just win a single mayoral election. They want to change the fundamentals of how people run the city, and also that includes how they vote. One of those changes we talked about in the Subway episode, it's been talked about a lot in politics, still is part of today. And the second we didn't get into, and that's changing how people vote. Now, Hinneke is aware of this threat to him, but he underestimates it. He's also interested in running his Columbia Amusement Company. His office is in New York. It's not just because he's being extravagant, although he probably is. Talent agencies are there, booking offices are there, theaters are there, producers that he needs to talk to are there to run his business. It's not really possible to run his business from Cincinnati, but he thinks it's possible to run Cincinnati from New York. So he's at that suite in the Midtown Hotel. At the time you get into 1921, the machine wins another election, get their people elected, all of these loyal people who have nothing in their campaign statements except, I want to be loyal to the Republican Party, these really general statements that make them look like every other Republican running nationally, but they're really part of this machine. He's overconfident, and he starts spending more and more time. It gets to be half a year, and then they can't even find Hinneke in Cincinnati anymore. Murray Seasongood emerges as a leader. He's Harvard educated. He's the head of a big law firm in Cincinnati. He's tired of his money going to contracts and poor city officials. The city's being run extravagantly. And Seasongood notices that you do have a bunch of candidates once in a while, even in that 1921 election, turn of the century, a few candidates that try to run against the machine. They never succeed because they're not organized enough and they haven't changed the fundamentals. Cincinnati should not be governed from a Broadway office, he says. That line becomes a refrain. In politics, you never want to give your opponent that kind of political talking point that they can just run with. And so Murray Seasongood, by the way, what a great name for a person who's a reformer, Murray Seasongood. It's like, let's vote for Seasongood. It's like John Jacob Jinglemeyer Smith, or his name is our name too, or something like that. He proposes two major changes. He institutes a city manager system. This becomes popular in the 1920s as a way to get rid of bossism, and it's advertised by the National Municipal League, good government folks, and it's still in existence today across the nation. Today's show is brought to you by Vanguard. To all of the financial advisors listening, let's talk bonds for a minute. Capturing value in fixed income is not easy. Bond markets are massive, murky, and let's be real, lots of firms throw a couple of flashy funds your way and call it a day. But not Vanguard. Vanguard bonds are institutional quality. Institutional quality isn't a tagline. It's a commitment to your clients. It means top-grade products across the board. The lineup includes over 80 bond funds, actively managed by a 200-person global squad of sector specialists, analysts, and traders. So if you're looking to give your clients consistent results year in and year out, go see the record for yourself at vanguard.com/audio. That's vanguard.com/AUDIO. All investing is subject to risk. Vanguard Marketing Corporation, distributor. In New Jersey, for instance, we have many towns where they have this city manager system. What does it mean? Basically, you take the politics away from the policy. You take the politics away from the day-to-day decisions by just having a council elected. Okay, that's the democracy, that's the politics part. And then they appoint a city manager. And that day-to-day stuff, hiring, firing, running the city, whose street gets, plowed and things like that. That's the city manager's job. And the idea is that you run a city like a business. This is the 1920s. Everything is business. You're going to hear a lot of this. And really, it's a case for a sensible business person to run the city of Cincinnati. That's what he wants. You're taking things out of the hands of the boss system. All they can do is elect that manager once. And so, really, you can't keep going to the political boss and saying, I need this done and I need that done, because there's a professional manager in the town that's going to be handling that stuff. The mayor in such a city manager system is actually elected by the council rather than the people. And so the mayor becomes more ceremonial, and the manager really is running the town. It's good and bad. By the way, I have seen towns suffer a bit from that system, particularly when the manager isn't good. And brief tangent, there's a town in my state, Montclair, very well-known town, that has city manager system. And I know that recently citizens there were so disappointed with the way the town was being run, and for a variety of reasons, and were frustrated that there was very little they could do about it. In fact, the entire council and mayor didn't run for their seats again, and they have an entirely new government there. Put that aside, though, that there can be problems with this system because of two things. One, the city manager system really works well when you're thinking of 19-teens and 1920s, and you have so many cities under some type of political boss or faction. It's really good at rooting that out. But secondly, you have to take one additional step. As you can probably imagine, if the city manager is controlled by the boss, what makes the system any different from bossism? And you're right. So you have to have a voting system that ensures that the council that elects the city manager will represent the people and everything that they want in a very broad sense. And that is what they propose today would be called ranked choice voting. They didn't use the term at the time. They used choice voting or proportional voting. We might call it STV, single transferable votes. Citizens in Cincinnati, Season Good proposes, won't just vote for one choice. They'll rank all 9 people running. In the first round, you can't just get more votes than anyone else and win. You have to reach a quota. The quota is votes divided by the number of seats plus 1. And if you're a candidate running and you beat that quota, you're elected even on the first round. They don't go to the number 2s for you. Physically, what's happening in a central counting center, and you can be sure in 1925 that there were lots of eyes on this central counting center. Season Good's people are watching. Hinnica's people are watching. Eye-rolling the whole process, but hopefully that the boss political machine could still maintain control. Government officers, police officers are watching, and the press is in the room watching. Votes come up from precincts in sealed boxes and are watched open by clerks, counters, and everything is watched by the press. Everything the counters do is put up by clerks onto a chalkboard. The process is well sold to voters, and they had approved this in a charter vote, a straight-up charter vote. Season Good would have described it as having more choice. I don't know if you've heard of that selling argument when you hear about ranked choice today. It seems like something that's just implemented by a computer. It's like artificial intelligence. It's just something so devoid of any human aspect, right? And that's what probably kills it today. If you guys listening are into ranked choice voting, you need to find the ghost of Murray Season Good and helpful articles in the Cincinnati Post at the time in 1925, because they have really good arguments. It's just like ranking your friends, they would say. It makes you sure that if your first choice wins, your vote goes on to help your second choice. These kind of business-minded Republicans are pretty good at selling things, and most of the arguments wasn't about justice or truth or some concept like democracy generally. It was about what this system, which would come to be called the Cincinnati method, can do for you. Your ballot will keep working for you. Things like that were said. When Season Good gets this city charter approved after a long fight, and he'd been battling with the boss system for a while, he becomes a national figure in the municipal reform movement and a model for good government. The mechanics of this voting in 1925, and of course keep in mind that it's all hand counts, no computers, is that they rank all the candidates after that first round of voting. If you won, they're going to take you out. You're a winner. You get a seat. But usually not every seat's going to be decided in the first round. And that's exactly what happens in 1925. So then they take the rest of the candidates in terms of number 2 rank votes and sort them. Who's got more of these number 2 rank votes? Anyone elected is removed, but they do not eliminate the ballots cast for that winning candidate. All right, so if you've got Bob Smith, who's won and has a seat, the way that the Cincinnati method acts is his ballots, the people that voted for him, still have more say, and they're still valuable. The winner, in effect, doesn't need all those votes. They met quota. So there's a surplus. How many more votes they got over quota? And those votes are going to be distributed to the rest. Ballots are removed from the winner's total. Every nth vote is removed to keep it random from that pile. So there's a stack of votes for Bob Jones, or Bob Smith, I should say, and every nth vote is going to be removed. Yes, it's going to depend on how it's stacked on the table, just like kind of a deck of cards. And yes, you can imagine in 1925 there were lots of eyes to be sure with the boxes opening and how they're distributed and all that stuff, that nobody's manipulated anything. It's as random as you can get with a hand count. See, the Cincinnati method like this is no longer used today with this nth ballot thing because computer methods are more random. In fact, you can do fractional votes now, which wouldn't have been possible at this time. But essentially the logic of it is, hey, the winner's votes contain some second preferences that are still important. Maybe you like Charlie because Charlie's just Mr. Cincinnati. You know, everyone's going to vote for him. But you also think that Sam is a good up-and-comer and has a lot to add to the city. You just, if you're in a first-past-the-post system where you only get one vote, you know, you're going to, Charlie's better, so I vote for him. But Sam is an up-and-comer, young kid, smart, probably has a lot to offer. So I'll make him my number 2 now. And we can consider those preferences now. The other logic is that we expect that a random nth of ballots that you would pull from the winner's pile would be a pretty good average. And today you can do random with a computer, but it's not perfect, but it's pretty good for hand counting. So if seats are still open and no one reached the quota, the lowest candidate is eliminated. And ballots in that pile from the candidate that's been eliminated are moved to the next valid preference shown. So people are getting additional, now in the number 2 round, people are getting number 2 votes from the winner's pile, if they were picked by the voters that voted for the winner, and by the eliminated candidates pile. What's the practicalities of this? The effect is you're enriching each candidate's possibility way beyond that first-past-the-post system can. If you look at Sam, that hardworking, young, upright citizen who has a lot to add, may not be anybody's favorite, but a lot of people like him and think he can go far. He's going to do probably very well in this number 2, especially if he's known around the city, because you're getting votes both from the eliminated person, who might be a fringe candidate or might be a neighborhood candidate, and from the winner. He's picking up number 2s perhaps from that. Now, the real case is not just some nifty kid named Sam, but if you start talking about minority groups in a city that have a, substantial following, but can't seem to win boss-controlled or first past the post because they are, don't have that crucial plurality but have a substantial amount of votes. You look at African Americans, for instance, in Cincinnati, they're a big contributor to the city's voting. They have to align themselves with Hinneka because that's the system, but they don't necessarily like what they're getting. And many civic leaders among African Americans are, how come there's no Cincinnati council person, and things like that. And this system eventually is going to help elect African Americans to the city council for the first time, including someone who's going to later become mayor. We'll get into that. So when you think about it, you might have a situation where there's like a prominent white leader, even on the progressive or liberal side, who might be for civil rights and things like that, but doesn't have the identity of an African American. The African American candidate, for many voters for that person, their second choice might be someone who is in the African American community, and this system allows them to advance where first past the post might only elect that kind of white progressive leader. This is the real effect of that. And you can take it in other examples. There's various religions that get elected, neighborhoods, people in smaller parties that start getting elected to council that otherwise wouldn't be there. The rounds keep continuing until all the seats are filled. They update the totals, they declare any new winners, they transfer their surpluses. So anytime there's a winner, their surpluses are going to go back into those other candidates and eliminate the current last place candidate and transfer that pile. Officials post each round's changes on big blackboards so reporters can file updates. And you're seeing the Cincinnati newspapers cover each of these rounds, which is going to take a couple of days. Cincinnati counts sometimes ran into the next 2 days. Everything is recorded, everything's watched. So all the ballots that are transferred to the different candidates, that's all logged and put on the blackboard. So there's a private and a public official recording of what's going on. These days, it's all done on computer. In fact, if you want, there's like a nifty program called OPA Vote, and you can run an election for yourself, and it'll work out all of these mechanics. So you don't need clerks and counters and things. But the result is that in 1925, the Charterites win the election, and Cincinnati was elected by Cincinnati as its first charter mayor. He's elected now by the council. And he serves for 5 years. During his administration, he's reducing the city debt, gets rid of that subway system, balanced the budget, professionalized the police force, the public works, promoted racial fairness in hiring, promoted fairness overall in hiring. Season Good isn't going to say, I'll make you a teacher if you're a Charterite. That's not how they work. He founded the Charter Committee, which is a political organization designed to preserve this reform movement. The interesting thing is that lasts long beyond Season Good. Here's the New York Times. A business city administration for Cincinnati with a prominent local lawyer acting as mayor and a former Army engineer from Washington as city manager. That's right. Who the council in Season Good hires for the city manager position is a guy straight from the fighting in World War I, who was supervising parks and buildings in Washington, D.C. They bring him into Cincinnati. A city council of 9, elected by proportional representation, selected Lieutenant Colonel Clarence O'Sherrill to be city manager. His election was a surprising outcome of the startling overthrow of the Republican organization's political machine, beginning with the organization of a charter committee 2 years ago. This was followed of a passage by a 2-to-1 vote of the amendment to the charter in the fall of 24 and the election of 6 of the candidates endorsed by the charter committee over 3 boss-run or organization candidates at the election last November. Mr. Season Good was the original leader in the revolt, at one time a member of its governing committee. He resigned after a conflict with Hinneke, head of the organization. It was said of Cincinnati after the victory of the Charter Committee ticket that he had fought practically alone through the 2 years. And in fact, I love this line from the New York Times. Men applauded him only privately until Election Day. Now, Cincinnati is as popular as his reforms. He lives to 104. He dies in 1983, so I guess ranked choice voting improves your health. I won't really say that. But the machine is not going to surrender quietly, and ranked choice voting is not going to last 104 years in Cincinnati. Spoiler alert. But it does last a long time. It lasts for 20 years, which is pretty good considering that over the years, entrenched business allies, bosses are seeking ways to blunt the effects of ranked choice voting, including just attacking it itself. So Hinneke, though he really loses power in this, is going to keep trying. And there's 6 attempts to kill off the system in Cincinnati's history. But, on the other side, they really promote it well. As we said, this won 2-1 in Cincinnati. Campaign leaflets and Cincinnati Post editorials describe it as a fair way to count every vote and to give each group its share of representation. Reformers say it meant no votes wasted and no boss choosing who wins. A key feature of safety in the Cincinnati system that was explained to voters is your first voice always counts. Your first vote always counts, always. When you select a person number 1, they benefit from that no matter what. That's the first round. And if that person wins and you voted for them, then you got what you wanted. Nobody's taking anything from you. We're just giving extra things to you because your ballot could potentially live on with your number 2, your number 3, your number 4 choice. You're getting more choice, in effect. And majorities rule, but minorities are heard under this system. Cincinnati's not the first place to institute this. Ashtabula, Ohio is. Full decade before Cincinnati. They were reacting again against bosses and introducing nonpartisan elections. And the movement there is led by civic associations and progressive Republicans. The Ashtabula Charter League, good government group, borrowing ideas from the National Municipal League's Model City Charter, which emphasized nonpartisan ballots and professional managements. Boulder, Colorado does the same thing in 1917, adopting a proportional ranked choice system as part of a new reformed charter. So if you're hearing today that these are like new ideas coming on the scene, no, they're part of what we might say the progressive movement, like people that voted for Theodore Roosevelt in 1912, progressive Republican groups, and also some people who might have voted for Taft in 1912, like business-minded Republican folks in cities tired of factions controlling things. It was a faction breaker. But here's the problem. In both those cities we just mentioned, and also in Sacramento and other cities where it's tried, it's under attack from the start. So the regular first-past-the-vote system doesn't get attacked by anyone because of its simplicity. It's like, well, the one that gets the most votes win. People tend to take that as faith. Well, that's democracy. Well, it is in a sense, but it's not picking up all of the feelings because we all know people win, become mayor. They're not necessarily, reflecting the happiness of the people all the time. We're always voting for who's the lesser of two evils and things like that. But Ashtabula and Boulder, Colorado do get rid of their system actually before Cincinnati does. And when anyone's in power, a group's out of power. And you get grumbling. And all you have to do in a lot of these cities to destroy the ranked choice voting system is to get another charter or some type of referendum vote, and you get a majority plus one, and it's gone. And again, while there's never that much attention on the normal voting system, when you have a city that has ranked choice, it's under attack all the time. So there are 6 attempts to get rid of it from 1936 to 1956 in Cincinnati. But it does have those 20 years. And people notice 2 things. One is that when you have proportional voting, you're able to make decisions. It forces cooperation. Obstruction is possible, but it's not the kind of like party-fueled ancient enemies type obstruction. It's often resolved quicker. It forces cooperation between all of these factions. No one feels that they have to impress a machine for long-term benefit for themselves because the machine can't guarantee them any success in the system anymore. But the most tangible success is the rise of minority and cross-party representation. In Cincinnati, black citizens elected representatives regularly for the first time in decades. New York City's watching. And in New York City, where they use a form of proportional voting for its, what they called then, now it's a city council, Board of Aldermen, from 1936 to 1947, smaller parties, the American Labor Party, and the Socialist Party, the Liberal Party, win seats alongside Democrats and Republicans. So you're getting the break into that two-party system that a lot of people want. But something else happens in New York that's going to have national consequences, including in Cincinnati. The Communist Party briefly holds 2 seats on the Board of Aldermen that many feel with first past the post, the communists wouldn't have won. And now you have communists in New York government. And, in the 30s, that's not such a strange thing. A lot of people are upset with the whole system. But as you're getting after World War II, and Stalin is up to his antics in Poland and other places, the Iron Curtain spreads, there's anti-communist feeling in the United States. In the 50s, you're going to start to get into McCarthy and everything like that. And New York ends its system. Now, everywhere there are these systems, they're using the New York example to attack it. Don't let radicals and extremists in through the back door. So the bosses return with a new line of attack. They're pro-American. They're anti-communist. So Cincinnati's other reform, the city manager system, will actually have a longer lasting effect than its ranked choice voting or the method that's named after the city, the Cincinnati method. It still is present in some of these computer systems, but it's not widely used compared to like instant voter runoff or the San Francisco method or the Minnesota method or the Scottish method. The city manager system is still used by 40% of towns over 20,000, 25,000 people. We have a professional, business-minded administrator running things day to day. That survives. But in 1957, really what happens is the anti-communist allegations are there. Oh, the system's confusing. You have newspapers presenting cartoons of people looking at these mazes on a ballot and how do they vote and the like. It's really something. And then there's a split among the charterites, and it happens over Cincinnati proposes an income tax. There is one member who had been part of the charter group, aligned with Season Good and others, who splits now because he doesn't like this. And because he's being obstinate on the income tax, he also wants to get rid of the proportional vote system. And once he does, there's a referendum, the city defeats it, and in 1957, they eliminate the ranked choice voting. But it has a couple of long-lasting effects. One is that Theodore Berry, who benefited from the proportional representation system, which allowed him to, and other African Americans, to get on the Cincinnati Council, is later, even after its demise, he's elected mayor. The first African-American mayor in 1972, and will serve 3 years. But he initially gets his seat through this charter system. There's another person to talk about here, someone you might know, and he's a famous TV personality, or at least was, and that is Jerry Springer. Jerry Springer grows up in Cincinnati. He enters Cincinnati law firm, enters politics. He sides with this charter committee, which even though the voting system is in place, the charter system still is in place. And there's still this charter committee reformist group. By the way, it still exists today. And he's elected to city council in 1971. And interestingly enough, because it's Jerry Springer and we know what he did with his talk show with a little racy at times and things, he has to resign in 1974 after admitting that he had paid a sex worker with a personal check. It makes national headlines. There's no tabloid television, but it looks like it's going to kill him. But Springer responded with candor. He publicly apologized. He takes responsibility. And he has a comeback within a year. In fact, he's reselected to the council. And by 1977, Jerry Springer is elected mayor of Cincinnati. He then moves into broadcasting. First, he's a political commentator for the local station. And then he's the host of a morning talk program. He's realizing he's pretty good at it. And in 1991, he launches the Jerry Springer Show, which initially he's tackling political and social issues. But we all need ratings, so it soon morphs into sensational, conflict-driven format that made him famous and infamous. The show had little to do with the civic ideals of the charter movement, but Springer often said that his political background taught him how to manage confrontation, listen to ordinary people, and understand what audiences want. I'm just giving you what you want. So this system has a history, the Cincinnati system, that's a little different because it's odd because right now in Ohio's the birthplace of ranked choice voting. Now there's legislators in the state capitol who want to ban it statewide, as has been done in Missouri. Voters banned it, so no town in Missouri can have ranked choice voting, and they're looking at banning it in other places. In Alaska, they have ranked choice voting for primaries and open primaries that they have there. Almost was repealed in 2024, the repeal effort lost by just 664 votes. Big campaign against it. We quoted Trump. We quoted the Heritage Association earlier in the podcast. We know how they stand on this. In New York, some candidates have brought it up as being unfair. It still is what's used in the mayoral primary there. And the mayoral primary really does determine who wins in New York. There's one place where it remains, and always has, and that's Cambridge, Massachusetts. So in 1941, Cambridge, Massachusetts decided to have a proportional vote system, and it still remains today. And studies there have shown that increases the diversity of who serves, that generally people like it, and all things like that. Cincinnati's celebrating 100 years of its charter movement this year. And now, instead of the city being controlled by Republicans, I see articles in some Cincinnati press that's completely controlled by Democrats, partly because the demographics have changed, people's opinions have changed, the parties have changed, right? And what they're offering nationally has changed. Cincinnati, I'll always point out, a city that had voted for Bob Dole, now would be considered a Democratic city. Some Republican voters have moved out to northern Kentucky, so their votes are no longer part of Hamilton County. And some people are looking at that again. Like, we have one-party control again. What can we do? You know, it's a city that's celebrating 100 years of at least that charter movement having succeeded. So that's it. Just wanted to talk about ranked choice voting that has a larger history than maybe some people are aware of. Could it be coming to a city near you? If you're like me, you're looking for ways to live better, live cheaper, spend smarter, travel more, make the most of your time. That's exactly what Chris Hutchins does every week on his podcast, All the Hacks. Chris covers everything from hacking credit card points and planning unforgettable trips to smarter investing, even better ways to cook dinner at home. 2 recent episodes that I liked of All the Hacks are a deep dive on Bank of America credit cards, up to 5.25% cash back. Sounds good, right? Or contrarian takes on money, risk, and retirement. Very important for those of us who are getting up there. So search for All the Hacks. That's All the Hacks in your podcast app. Hit follow and start upgrading your life today. Again, that's allthehacks.com/podcast. You'll be glad that you did.